Do you ever wish you could witness the greatness and power of God in action today, beyond what is written in the Bible? At Pilgrim Way Lives, we collect and bring you testimonies from Christians around the world of what God is doing in their lives to show you that our Lord Jesus Christ is very much alive today. Your testimony might be the only one that will resonate with someone somewhere around the globe, so come and testify. We collect testimonies in all formats, whether it's video, audio, or written. No testimony is too small. Let God use your testimony for good. You can testify in person or online by sending us your testimony at pilgrimwaylives.com/testify. Join us in this conquest and gathering and sharing testimonies by supporting us financially at pilgrimwaylives.com/donate. Thank you for supporting and participating in Pilgrim Way Lives. For more information about our ministry, visit pilgrimwaylives.com and contact at pilgrimwaylives.com.
Welcome, Reginald, to the Program Life show. We are honored first to be you to be willing to give us your testimony, because the whole point of this is to hopefully our testimonies can help someone else wherever they are in life, because we never know what we've been through and can hopefully help someone else overcome the same thing too. And the whole thing is how testimonies is not really for us. It's more about to show what God can do, that people know no matter where they are not too far gone for God to be able to do what He does best, pretty much.
Of course.
Yeah. So
thank you for having me, by the way.
Well, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. So we'll start first with prayer, and then I'll let you introduce yourself, and you take the lead from there.
All right.
All right.
Touch hands.
Almighty Father, you're the one that said, with your more gathered in my name, you will be in our midst. Have your way now, Lord. Guide the word that comes out of our mouth, that is served for your purpose and only your purpose only. And no matter how hard it might be, let the Holy Spirit flow. Let that will be done and not our will be done. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All righty. Well, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, my testimony is in and out a little bit, I think. So, grew up in a Christian household. I think everybody always says, like, oh, grew up in a Christian household. So
yeah, we have a lot of that.
I'll definitely let that fact be known, I suppose. And I remember going to church, you do Bible study lessons and things like that, and really just going through the motions because it's what I was supposed to do. I feel like you go to church, big church in the South. Tony Evans is a world-renowned pastor, so it's like, well, everyone's doing it, so I'm going to do it as well. Make my parents proud, make myself proud, feel it in my spirit, I suppose, right? So in the midst of all of that, there was a lot of just, like, why am I doing this? And what's happening? Like, what's really going on? And, like, I get why people are saying, oh my God, the Holy Spirit's doing this. I'm falling out and feeling this way. Or, you go to a Baptist church, you're seeing people running across the stage and hands raised in the air. Look, all of that. And it's like, okay, something is up. I guess something is there, but it always felt like I don't get it. Like, I would see my mom go to worship sometimes and just, raise her hands and just see a surrender. I'm like, what are we surrendering? Like, what? I don't really get it.
I don't feel the same thing.
Yeah, it's like, is the heat on? You feel a breeze? Something ain't right. So in the midst of all of that, that just turned into a lot of, going through the motions, I suppose, right? The Christian motions, if that makes sense. You get baptized, you do all those things, and you just think that that's enough for a long time. And then, had a praying Christian grandmama, praying mama, praying other grannies as well, pawpaws, pastors, all that jazz. And with everybody praying for you, it's also like, well, I'm okay. Why? Because I'm being taken care of, if not by my own prayers, by somebody else. It's like somebody prayed for me, somebody had it out, somebody was looking for my best interest, praying for my best interest, all that. So in the midst of all of that, I think I just got caught up. I was like, I got a good life. I got a perfect life. People praying for me. I didn't have too rough of a childhood per se. But I think the big rock in all of it personally came from 6th grade. Dude named Joey Krabby was like, hey, there's this website, it's got all this stuff on it, girls looking like that, and these actions, these videos. And this is 6th grade. So I'm like curious, thinking about it, right? And it's crazy. 6th grade. 6th grade. It starts so early sometimes for some folks.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it's just, it can blow you away because as a 6th grader, what is that? You're 12 years old, maybe 11 years old. that's just pure curiosity. You just
Yeah,
like,
just
I
like,
wonder what that is.
I wonder what
right?
that is.
Yeah, you
Like,
told me what it was. I
like
know
I
the
see
spell.
I see all these adults trying to hide it. I wonder what they're hiding.
Yeah. And this was coming from a kid my age. So I'm like, all right, let me see. So I go home. My mom works for a company called Young Life at the time.
Uh-huh.
And they look at her history every time.
How
So,
about the history?
yeah, all of that. They get it's sent right to her. And I remember that night, stupid. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. I was doing a little project on her laptop. And I'm like, you know what, let me see what this website was real quick that he said, right? Or let me go and type some stuff in. So I was like looking up all kind of celebrities and things. And, you know, instead of typing like porn, you type in like nude, or you type in something something to get around there. You know, like I don't want to be behind the curtain, but let me just see, let me figure out what's back there. You know what I'm saying? If I can see through it, that works. Stupid, right? And definitely opened up a box and a path that I don't think I was ready for. No one is, and I don't think you're ever supposed to even go down that path. But exposure is exposure, you know. And I'm not gonna say, oh well, what do I do now? Because you know, it's what I was given. So in the midst of all of that, I look all that stuff up. There's maybe 32 different searches in I think 3 minutes. So the next day, she's like, hey, she sits the family down in the living room. She's like, hey, who looked up all this stuff? And she's reading it in front of the whole family. This. So it's just me and my sister. My sister's a year older than me, and my dad. Only people that have access to her laptop at that time was my sister and me. I'm sitting here like, oh, I remember saying, I can't type that fast. I don't know how that got up there. I don't know what happened. Scared out of my life. And my dad took me in the car. We go for a little drive. Like, so you like boobs or butt? Right? And I'm like, what? And while that wasn't saying, go for it, you know, hey, it's just porn, you're all right. I remember I have a cousin named Joseph. I love him to death. I go to him now, honestly. Believe it or not, I go to him for so much more spiritual things and so much more guidance these days. And that just shows you how much we can change as people. And I remember him saying, at least you ain't gay, you know, at least it wasn't, you know, at least it wasn't, you know, gay porn or something. He tried to find the light in the midst of this horrible situation, right? And the dad saying, you know, my dad saying, you like boobs or butt? That was also more of like, hey, okay, but what you like? What you looking at? So in the midst of all of that, there was just a lot of confusion, I believe, because you know when you got these role models and you expect so much, and I'm not gonna say I expected that much in 6th grade, but I definitely didn't know. Like my heart dropped, but the reaction from my peers was not a heart dropping kind of resuscitation or not resuscitation. What's it like? There was not a heart stopping retaliation, I should say, right? So in the midst of all that, I'm like, okay, well, cool. And that became my little friend, I guess, right? It was like my little suitcase. Like earlier, I was saying dark corners. Yeah. That was my dark corner in a sense, right? As I grow up a little bit older, my dad and me, we had okay relationships, you know, and I think a couple years back when I was attempting to speak to him or maybe go and have some type of relationship with him, whether it be funny, like, hey, dad, what if the sky turned purple and all clouds started raining lemonade, you know, like just anything like that. And there was a lack of emotional presence sometimes from my father, and that weighed on me a lot. You know, it weighed on me so much, and I didn't realize it for a long time. But anytime somebody would bring it up, like my mom would say, "Hey, how you and your dad doing?" And we all live together. She would know. She can see it. Yeah. But there'd be arguments sometimes. I'm like, okay, you know, and there became a lot of, I guess, like low self-esteem associated with any conversations with my father because of the way growing up it was just perceived. And it, you know, I think the first 5 or 6 years was great. 6th grade was probably even great still, but I think as I got older, I just saw more and said less, you know, and I think that really kind of aided my heart, aided my mental, aided my physical a lot.
What do you mean by saw more and say less?
I saw more times where my dad could not show me the love that I was asking for, and I said less about it.
I see. Okay.
And when you say less as a kid, it becomes a habit eventually. Now I'm 19 years old saying less, still feeling these same feelings that I've felt for years, not knowing how to express it. One, because if anybody ever brought it up, it was such a sore subject, I would fall into tears. Like I said earlier, if my mom ever brought it up, I was crying. I was like couldn't get the words out, right? And it was to a point where she said like, hey, like, we need to talk about this. Like, you got to fix that, right? And I think there's a really great ending to that story, which is I was at a young life camp in Utopia, Texas, called Lone Hollow Ranch, and I was serving there for a month as a lifeguard. I was there for 5 weeks. My dad pulled up randomly, didn't even know he was coming, gave me a hug, and throughout that time before he got there, I was working with my coordinator. He's kind of like the guy who I would go to for spiritual advice, and like we did devos every day. And like the guy I'm growing with, he also had problems with his father, and he said like, "Hey, you got to be the bigger guy. You got to fix it, right? And you have to sometimes step up. And even though you're the son, sometimes you have to take that position, right? And sometimes you have to love them exactly where they are. And loving somebody where they are is not hard, but it definitely can come with challenges because if you're younger, you're like, you're the dad. You're supposed to be loving me. Yeah, like what reciprocation? You're supposed to have that, right?
It's easier said than done.
Way easier said than done. And because it is such a heart action, and my heart wasn't in the right place when it came to my father, I had to really see where he was. And he pulled up, gave me a big old hug. I'm hugging him, and he's a big dude. He's 6'6". You know, I'm right up in there, right? And it was just a beautiful time to get to see a beautiful father-son reaction. No words were spoken. It was just embrace, right? And I get home, and I'm gonna just give you some details real quick. When I was in college, I went away to New York. My family lived in Texas at the time. At that time, I was like, well, I'm probably going to not get to have this conversation, this heartfelt conversation, and get these pieces moved in our relationship like I need to. So I'm going to write you a letter. It was 2:00 in the morning. I'm on the couch. It's dark. The only thing you can see on my face is the screen of the laptop, right? I'm typing, crying, because this is an emotional letter. I'm saying like, hey, Dad, I forgive you for wanting so much more that you didn't have. Why? Because I realized his father didn't treat him well. Your father only beat on you. Your father did not love you. Your father couldn't even say it. It got to a point where eventually my dad showed me pictures of him and his dad, and they had just won a basketball tournament. His dad wasn't smiling. My dad just won the tournament, wasn't even smiling. My heart broke for him, but then I also understood so much more.
I was like, where he came from.
That's exactly it. I was like, that's where you're coming from. How could I expect so much when you had nothing? How could I?
Didn't even know what it was.
Didn't know what it was. And see, of course, my grandpa's alive today and we talk all the time, but that's a different side of him now. Like that's so far behind him that.
And it's more you, and it's more like you're his grandson, you're not his son.
Yeah. So that reciprocation of love, it came so easy for him because he's like, okay, well, maybe this is my chance to do it again, do it better. And in the midst of all of that, I grew up spiritually. I said, you know what, Dad, I love you too much to see the relationship y'all have, because he did not speak to his father. There was a point in time where my grandfather would call the house and they're like, hey, don't pick the phone up. Like, do not pick that up. And I'm like, wait, I love this man. He loves me. Like, what is the relationship that y'all have that we don't have? Like, I don't see where this malice is coming from, right? So in the midst of all of that, things would happen and I would always question, why? Like, what is this? What happened, right? That picture showed me everything, and then he always had stories about, man, my dad would have beat my ass for this. My dad would have did this. My dad would have done that. And I realized, like, wow, you don't have many positive things to say about your father. And then I saw that translation starting to grow in me. And I said, no, that's not going to be our story. That is not going to be the way we continue about this, right? And it took a while. It definitely did. The letter was a starting point. I wrote that letter 2:00 in the morning, crying. He came in the room and he was like, hey, you all right? And I was like, I'm good. And that was it, right? He went to bed. I kept writing. I sealed this letter up. I put it in my room in between some books. And let's say that was in like August, right? I go to college in New York. It's about October. He calls me one day crying like, hey, I found a letter. And I'm like, dang, how you find that letter? I hid that thing so perfectly, I would have thought. And he found it. He was crying. He was like, hey, man, I see what happened. And like, I'm sorry. And it took the man in me to say, okay, I forgive you. Yeah, I forgive you. One, I love you. And I said, don't worry about it. To let him know, like, hey, I forgive you. And just like God, forgive and forget, you my dad, I can't forget, but I can forgive you and love you now. I can love you more now that you see where I'm at.
Now you guys can grow.
You see how much more I want this, and I can't allow us to be just like you and your father, right?
Yeah.
And they're working on that relationship now that I have started to work on my dad's relationship. And it's been a beautiful thing. It's been a beautiful process for sure. A lot of growth in that, man. Like The way I'm smiling about it now, 5 years ago, I would have been bawling. I could not get that much out. And even as I'm telling this story, I felt the emotions. I'm like, ooh, wee. But that's on being healed, man. That is on being healed. And that is on getting to see a relationship switch completely. Not from me, not from him, not from his father, but from the father, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, ooh, that's so God, so powerful, so big. And it's like, thank God that he is the father to the fatherless, right? And I had a father,
Yeah.
but he showed me, you know, he took me in,
He's that
the father, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Capital THE, capital FATHER, like that man is in. So that was just a beautiful time. And like that was going on in the midst of my little dark corner,
Mhm.
right? So it never really came up again. I didn't really talk to my dad about the pornography addiction because
Mhm.
it's hard. You know, it's not
It's shameful.
something, it's shameful as I don't know what. It's like, here's all my dirty laundry. Don't judge me. You know, and there were many times where it would be like, oh man, like I wonder, like people would ask me if I'm good, and I am. I'm doing well. I'm fine because I'm cool in my dark corner. I was comfortable in my dark corner. We don't got to talk about it. Like I said earlier, God, come on in. Don't come to that corner. Don't come to this corner. Don't come to this corner.
You stay
Those
right
are
in the living
mine.
room.
Stay right in the living room.
Don't
I'll
put the-
bring
don't
you
put the
whatever you
kitchen-
need. Matter of fact, don't get up, Lord. I'm gonna lock the door. You can't leave, but don't go nowhere else. Now that you're here, stay where you are. And that's that contentment that comes with that, and that's that flesh getting comfortable with the flesh, you know. And spirit just can't, you know. My spirit definitely could not just sit there and let that, you know, fester and grow. And it did. It definitely grew. It grew from sixth grade up until about this year for sure. I went to church. My family. I went back home in December to go see him for Christmas and things, and it went really well because I was like, man, I need some help. And if I keep acting like I don't need help, we're gonna keep struggling, you know.
Yeah.
So I reached out to a pastor of mine for some therapy, like I said, and he said, hey, we're not gonna do therapy. Let's just talk as friends. Kind of like this, right? I already feel comfortable with you, Chris, and I'm like, man, I could talk to you for hours if I needed to. So it feels good that I could have that relationship with somebody I could be that vulnerably open with and intentionally vulnerable, you know, intentionally.
And it's also a spiritual leader that
Yeah.
it made it even better because
Yeah.
you knew how to guide you, not just let you just
Exactly.
go about your
And
way.
it's not, look, because I'm like, with therapy, I ain't trying to get somebody who don't know God, and now he's sitting here, well, did you drink your chamomile tea? I'm like, nah, boss, it's not going to work. Or use these crystals, you know, use these tarot cards. Oh, the sun was up this morning. I think the sunlight will help you out. Like, you can depend on a million things that depend on one thing.
But God
And
first.
yeah, God first. He's, you know, he's like Tony Evans would always say, there are resources and then there's a source.
Yeah.
And you can go to your source or you can go to your resources, but resources run out. But resources, if they come from the source can't run out.
Yeah.
So, you know, as I've learned to open up about that and struggling with that for so long, it affected everything, you know, porn. And I gotta say, you know, most people say, oh, my lust or my addiction. Porn destroyed a lot of relationships. You know, I think a long time ago, I saw something that said porn kills love. And as true as it was still so hard to grasp because when you look at things like that, it's like, no, I still love people. I still love this. I still love that.
Yeah, it
But
starts
then-
very little. It's
Yeah.
like the devil has like, it's like people say, you try to give him a finger, he will grab your whole wrist. You try
Yeah.
to give him the wrist, he will grab the whole arm before you even know it.
So if I gave him my hands, we sitting here chest deep. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh man, like imagine the water's right here. And I'm like, you know, trying to hard. You know, I'm like, oh, look, I'm gonna go 2 weeks and be okay. I'm not gonna think about it. I'm not gonna do things like that. You know,
Yeah.
and that's that little gasp of air that makes you think you got it, and you still, you know, you're still this deep under the water. So in the midst of all of that, I'm like, okay, I need to change. So therapy was definitely that change, and it helped me to just be more open about what I was going through.
Yeah.
Because I think the biggest part and the biggest reason why I was like, man, I'm so excited to do this, you know, this little, not an interview, but like to just share my testimony because the freedom in that for me is so big. And in college, I was talking to people all the time and had all these little girls and all these little boo things. And I used to tell people, man, in college, I didn't sleep in my bed not one time. And there was so much truth in that, no grace, and the truth was really a lie. You know, I was taking pride in things that were not prideful.
You shouldn't,
know?
yeah.
And the lust became such a normal thing because that's college. You know, you think that, and really that's not college. You know,
It's
you,
not
you, you
college.
went to college to learn. You went to get
Yeah.
your education. You did not go there to
do all
rack
the
up,
things.
you know, and do all that mess. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? But the culture, the
It's the
society, and all
environment.
those things, like, it's pushed, it's fed, and not to give excuses, but it's genuinely just like those who are not in the spirit see it exactly like that. It's like, yeah,
For them, it's normal.
yeah. I'm like, this is what you're supposed to be doing: smoking weed and having sex and drinking and all types of outlandish things, right? So, dropping that, I left college. I deleted all my social media last summer, and the influence of the society left. And now I'm sitting here like, okay, now it's just me with no other influences, loving porn. So we got
We're gonna deal with it.
we got to deal with this, because how can I, one, work for Young Life, work for this ministry, do all these things and say all these things, go lead kids,
And you have this big
right?
secret.
Hey, it's huge. I got this corner in my house. It ain't a big secret. You did this. We need a way bigger lens, boss. So when you look at
The
that,
flat screen TV.
exactly. I need a 70. Matter of fact, it's the stage. It's the projector, matter. Look, it was big. I'm not trying to brag on my Simba. It was it. I know how big it was and the grips it had. So in the midst of all of that, it was challenging to open up because you know how big it is.
Yeah.
And
when you're in ministry too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that condemnation will come in. That people say, oh, there's no condemnation
no,
for those in Christ Jesus.
The human beings.
Oh, trust me, it's there.
Yeah.
And a lot of it came from myself, so deleting social media because I'm sitting here scrolling, looking at all these girls. It's like, oh, it's summertime. I couldn't wait for spring break or Valentine's Day. Let's see what they're going to post. Screenshot and all that stuff. So it got to the point where I'm like, the point of no return for me was like every single type of social media, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, all this stuff is so littered with it. There's no way I could get clean of this if that's what I'm feeding myself. And then it got to the point where I'm like, okay, well, look at what I'm watching. I'm watching all this crazy stuff. Now, I don't like reality TV and keeping up with the Kardashians and all that mess, but even in some of the cartoons and animes and things, there was so much going on.
It's included in all these little things.
It's in everything.
Even the little things that they make for kids now, like it's included in.
You can see a sunscreen commercial. Shardy got her, her stuff all out, and you like, whoa, wait a minute. But now I'm sitting here like, I know that any little push is going to push me to continue to go right back to where I am.
Yeah.
And deleted it because I was like, it's not going to help me grow. And it may be hard, it may be changing, and it may be something that I'm going to miss. But how much am I really going to miss this when my spirit gets right?
Yeah.
Like the motivation of, once this is behind me, I could care less. You know what I'm saying?
Got a lot left.
And there's people out there who I've met, and some of the guys that I used to minister to me sometimes, that showed me the lengths they had to go to just to get rid of that. And I'm 22. I can't delete my social media. I'm 22. I can't stop watching TV and doing all that. Like, how could I live a life like that? And now I got a TV in my house right now. It's not plugged in. I have just Instagram on my phone to connect with some Young Life things, and that's about it. No other social media exists, and it feels good to have that cleanse. But I'm not going to act like I'm just good to go.
Yeah.
There's definitely times like Instagram ads these days,
have
explore page. It's a million things I don't have to click. It's right there.
Yeah.
I was watching an anime one time, and I was like, this is cool. It's just a cartoon. I tell myself it's a cartoon and I'll be fine. But I'm like, they drew that really well.
Yeah.
She looked really good. I might need to turn this off. And it was hard at first because I'm like, man, I was enjoying that. And I was like, let me see what part of me was enjoying that. Was I enjoying that? Was my soul enjoying that? Or was it my flesh?
Yeah.
Exactly. What was enjoying this so much that now I can't let it go?
Yeah.
And you know how you're just like, man, you break up with a girl, or let's say you move on from a certain situation,
but you can't let go.
Yeah, you haven't let go completely, right?
Yeah.
And let's say it was sex with a girl. Then it's like, oh man, this is gonna suck because I realize the connection I have with her has gone a lot deeper simply because I've opened myself up in this way, or because I have exposed myself to certain things to the point where it's going to be a lot harder to move on, not because of the sex, not because of this, but because of that connection my soul has had to it, because of that thing my flesh could not let go of, right? So in the midst of that and seeing that and realizing just how off it was, I was like, dang, I'm so deep. It's wrong. I know it's wrong,
but you can't stop,
and I can't stop. That's it's that realization can cripple you down because it's all truth, right?
Yeah,
all truth. It's all true. You know it's wrong. You know you're doing it. You know you need to stop. You know it's hard to stop. You sometimes feel like you can't stop, and that's just truth breaking you down.
Yeah.
Thank God He is gentle and lowly, and has grace and mercy, and loves you throughout that, right? Just like I had to love my dad where he was, God still loved me where I was.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to see that though. It's really hard to see that when you're caught up in it. You're caught up in all the things you've been doing, and it's become so habitual that you can't see a problem with it because I've been living my life this way. God's still blessing me, and all these things are still happening. So how could this possibly hinder me? In the midst of that, though, it grew. It grew to a point where I was like, okay, let me intentionally go to bed and not do it. Like I'm going to sit here, clear-minded, not do a thing. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I'll get on my phone. Let's put on some cartoons. Let's put on like something for babies, like something that don't got nothing in it, and just see Coco Melon. Coco Melon, yeah, exactly, right. And then now it wasn't Coco Melon. Yeah, literally anything. Like give me ABCs by the Wiggles or Barney or the Teletubbies, anything, right? I'll watch Clifford the Big Red Dog if that means I'm good, And I realized my body was conditioned. Not just my soul, not just my soul, not just my spirit, not just my flesh, but okay, I'm laying down, I'm watching it, right? I'm like, bro, what my hands doing down there? Not even thinking about it. Like subconsciously, my body was so used to it that without even trying, it was a natural habit from the years of struggling with it, right? So now even when I'm not thinking about it, your body is naturally there, right? So I'm like, okay, that's a problem. I should probably change that, right? And then also I was sleeping in a certain spot in my room. I switched my whole room around, flipped my mattress over and all that jazz. I was like, let me clean this up. Let me stop sleeping like a pig and like really truly make an effort, not just what I'm saying or what I'm watching, but with my whole 9 yards. So as that happened, I saw some changes, right? But then again, that was more of a physical, and it was more of a keep working on this mental. Yeah, and God's still sitting right there, like, hey, I see you in the corner. I'm here when you want your help, but you gonna have to call on me. You gonna have to come get me. You know what I'm saying? I don't force you. And I love and hate. God's a gentleman, so He ain't gonna force nothing. I love that. And I hated it because I'm like, man, God, you can get me. You can come on, pick me up, Dad. Like, what we doing? So in the midst of all that, I realized how hard it is to really, truly die to yourself, right? And to become alive to Christ. I know how easy He makes it because as soon as you do, you'll feel the change, right? Like earlier I said, I'm now craving God. I've talked to my pastor, my therapist. I've opened up about some things, and as he gave me this list, I'm taking notes. I'm like, all right, accountability, find a church, find people, be open, be vulnerable, share your testimony, like do these things, and you will see the changes, right? And in the midst of all that, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do it. Why not? I've been struggling for this long. It's become so natural. I don't even have to think about doing it, and it's like it's going to happen regardless. So let me put the work in. So I start putting the work in. I dug into 1 Corinthians 13:13, talks about love, and the end of it actually ends with saying, like, despite your talents and everything God has blessed you with, all you need is faith, hope, and love. He said, faith is what gets you there. Like, you believe it, so it's gonna work. And the good thing is, thank God, we believe in the true word. So it's like, okay, even if I didn't believe it, it's still true. So that's a strong foundation to start with, right? And he said, well, now hope is the endurance. Hope is what gets you going, because it's like, if you don't think you're going to get clean, you may never get clean. Because you're never going to try if you don't have any hope. Exactly, right? And love is like the bow that ties it all together, because God's love is not going to stop. Just because I bump the road, just because I fall down, just because I'm in the mud does not mean He don't love me. You know what I'm saying? He's right there with me. He will keep showing up. Yeah, and I think sometimes we get so deep into those dark corners that we think God's not in the dark corners. You invite Him in the house, and we think He's just sitting on that couch still. And God's sitting there within that dark corner like, hey, I still got you. I still love you. I'm still here for you. And there was so much for me in that. Like, wait a minute. I'm laying in this bed thinking about what I shouldn't be doing. God's sitting right here with me. He ain't laying in it with me, but He's sitting here like, hey, I'm right here. I'm right here. Just reach out. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's longing for it, right? He's waiting for you to just ask. Just ask. That's it, right? And that's another thing about that prayer. I know people are praying for me. I know that my mom, my granny, all these people are praying for me. And recently I heard Jesus is praying for me. God is on His knees praying for me. Longing for me to be clean, to be closer to Him. Like, if God is praying for me, the person who I didn't even think is mad at me, He's praying for me. The person I thought was was upset with me is praying for me. The person I thought was disappointed in me is praying for me. The person that loves me that much is praying for me. That's like what? Like that. It blew me away to the point where I'm like, okay, I gotta get clean. Like not only are they praying for me, God is praying for me. Jesus is on his knees every day, daily, without ceasing, right? Praying for me, praying for you, right?
Yeah.
It was crazy to hear that, but I was also like, wow, I needed that, and it was so big because I realized, like, wow, if Jesus is praying for me, why am I not?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I not praying for me? Why am I just soaking in still as if I'm in the 6th grade, just soaking up everything I can from everybody else?
Yeah.
Why have I not made it my own, right? And got into my own Bible. I always tell myself, you have every tool you need, yet you don't utilize them. I have every tool I need, but I am not.
You're not using it.
Yeah, I'm not using it. It's sitting right there. That Bible's in my car sometimes.
It's like
It was on the
it's
porch
collecting
sometimes.
dust.
Yeah, just sitting there doing nothing. I'm like, wow, they say broken Bibles belong to people who aren't broken, right? But I realized, I was like, man, my Bible is tattered up. I'm sitting here tattered up, and it's just right there. Like everything I need is in this book, yet I'm not dwelling in it like I should. So that has been a new challenge for me to definitely make time for God and to make time to do things correctly, because it's been huge, And I think another thing as well is so when I was in college and a little bit of before that, I didn't do any drugs, didn't smoke, didn't do sex, none of that stuff when I was in high school. I got to college from Texas to New York. I'm like, ain't nobody watching. God is watching, of course, but I'm like, ain't nobody watching. Who gonna stop me? I'm good to go. So in that, I did all this weed and stuff. I never experimented with all that other crazy stuff because I'm like, I don't want to go too far. And I've always known about, like, demons can lie and some of that stuff. And like, you don't want to go so far into it that you lose yourself.
Yeah.
And now you're dealing with
Something else.
totally different, like something unworldly that your spirit may not be ready for or something like that. So weed became a big crutch for me. Like, I was like, you know what? Let me just chill out real quick then. If my spirit can't get right, my physical gonna get right. Or if I can't find the peace I need because I know what I'm still struggling with. In the midst of college, like you have sex with all these girls or these girls are loving you. And I was a gentleman. People were like, oh my God, you're so sweet. And like, I've never met a guy like you, all this stuff. And in the midst of that, I'm like, man, yeah, I know I can treat you right. I know this, that. But I'm struggling. I'm having all this sex. And when I couldn't have sex, I was going to porn. And when I didn't need porn, I was going to sex. And it would be all these relationships and things that would happen and boil down to nothing. Why? Because, it's empty. But the soul ties are still there, right? So now I'm like, man, she is caught up. I'm already moved on. Why? Because I'm just lusting.
Yeah.
There's no real feeling in this, right? So as that broke down, the real truth came out of like, wow, the porn has gone so deep that I am no longer self-gratifying. I'm doing it with somebody else, but also that's a two-way street that's just going to make it even worse. So as I fall back with that, I'm like, I'm a grown man now. I live by myself. And I'm not trying to, like, sex is not that big of a deal to me. But I'm like, also, sex ain't but porn is. Like, what's the true difference in that if I'm not a married man who has done what I need to do, right? So,
who does things by God's rule.
Exactly, right? So in the midst of all that, I'm like, okay, I need to break this down. I need to continue to dig into this, dig into why I can lay down and it just wants to happen. Dig into why I was so deep in my own that I start to make excuses for my stuff. And just really sit down and face the facts, right? So as I did that, I got into my Bible a little more, and it's something I'm currently working on now. I think every time I've ever asked, and I asked this because I'm lazy, and I'm like, oh, I gotta do it every day. Every day.
I mean, you get to eat every day, don't you?
I do. Apparently, we have to breathe every day too. But I'm like, that's a little easier than sitting down and finding time for God. But my soul, like I said earlier, my soul got hungry. My soul started to crave it. And I'm like, man, I know what porn has done in the past. I know the grips it has had, and I know how much power I've allowed it to have, but I also know how much power God has. I know how well God works, and I also know how well I can put things back together again if I use God. Matter of fact, I can't put things back together again. I know how well God can put things back together because I know how good God is, right? So in the midst of all that, it just became more than an urge. You know what I'm saying? Like, how pornography is an urge. You can sit there and fight it. And then if you give in, now you watch porn and now you're doing whatever.
Before you know,
with God, exactly. With God, if I got this urge, I'm like, wait, God probably want me to have this urge to get into the word. So I can only imagine if I act on this, how much better I'm going to feel.
It's gonna get the urge.
Yeah, like it's going to get stronger and stronger. And the more I make this a habit, before I know it, look, I'll be reaching for my Bible. It's not even there. Like, oh, Lord, my fault. Let's get home so I can, get with you real quick. And I get a lot of energy. I get a lot of love, and I get a lot of reassurance from his words. I love words of, affirmation, but the words of affirmation the Bible has for you,
it's the whole
oh gosh, that thing is like a cold shower and then the perfect temperature of warm and then the love and the grace and the forgiveness and just everything that you need to continue to go and to continue to grow.
It's in there.
It's just in there. And I'm like, Lord, you unpack this thing full of the goods. So like,
it's like golden nuggets.
why wouldn't I pick this up more, right? I love golden nuggets. I love regular nuggets. And these Jesus nuggets, I'm like, I need 16 of these every night at the least, right? So as I try to get more into that, I think sometimes I realize that every day is going to be a struggle because we're still in the flesh. We're still in the world of sin. Like the world is of sin, and then we have the symptoms of sin as well. So to consistently fight through that, I'm like, dang. And it's a verbal process for me for sure. But as I say it now, I'm like, wait, we have to be deep in the word because we're not out of this yet. We're still right here. And just like breathing, just like eating every day, we need that word every day. Just like praying, we need that every single day. Mm-hmm. So I got to get on my grind. I got to get on my consistency. And I have to realize that if I want to get stronger, I've got to go to the gym, right? If I want to get mentally stronger, I got to go to him, right?
Yeah.
And I broke it down like this with the porn thing. I was like, man, if I keep seeing all this stuff,
you're gonna grow stronger at home.
Exactly. And I got so strong, and now I have to de-muscle and kind of deflate what was so big and so inflated to the point where now I used to break it down like this. I was like, well, if I'm an alcoholic, I'm not gonna be like, okay, well, I'm not gonna go. I'll go to the bar. I'm just not gonna drink anything, or I'm gonna just drive past it real quick and look at it, or I'm gonna go to the liquor store. I'm just gonna walk around and see all my old favorites. That ain't gonna help. You know what I'm saying? Why would I go and expose myself so much more? And I know I'm struggling with this.
Yeah.
And that came in the form of like, if I go out, there's a beautiful girl at the bar. I'm like, oh, let me, the first look is like, oh, she's beautiful. And there's no lust in, appreciating the beauty of a woman or
the second look.
Yeah, it's that. Oh, that's when it's bad, So it clicked to me that I need to do everything it takes. Yes, I deleted social media. Good job. But my boy is still there. You know what I'm saying? Like everything I didn't think about it being in is still right there. To the point where the cartoons I'm watching and stuff. And I watched one singular anime show, but there was just so much more that would like bring more out. So like Family Guy, Quagmire, he's like the sex thing in that whole thing, right? And I'm like, I can't watch this no more. American Dad, every now and then, like I'm saying, something pops up, and I'm like, I can't do it again, right? Or just there's so many shows out there. There's so much stuff. It's all in the world. So
yeah, I mean, it happens because I remember quite a while ago because I was watching Netflix a while ago, and then you start all these shows. They will start all good. You're like, I find a good show I can watch. By like episode 6, 7, 8.
Yeah.
They will clip something, and I'm like, come on, I can't watch this anymore.
Dang.
And then
I was really enjoying that.
And you get to a point where you have like nothing to watch and all these things. So that's also one of the reasons why I try, because I'm hopefully down the line something that I can grow. That way we can actually have a place where Christians can actually produce their own shows and have their own standards.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like now to watch anything, you're forced to end up having to watch those things. And it's not even watching, because then you end up feeding yourself, and then before you know it, you get desensitized to sin, and it's like, oh, it's just normal.
Yeah.
Everyone,
it's just drinking, it's just smoking, it's just this, it's just that, and that excuse, that normalization it can take you for a ride if you're not ready for it. And I remember as a kid, you remember Empire? There was a show, it was a musical show. It got Terrence Howard, Taraji P. Henson, and a couple other actors. And there was just a point in time where it was just a music show, and there's a lot going on: drugs, alcohol, sex, and like all types of it. So it was just like, my mom at that young age was like, "Hey, you're not gonna watch this anymore. We're not gonna watch this as a family, as a household. We're not gonna watch this anymore." And I think the only thing we were able to watch was The Voice. good little singing competition, just like, this is the boy, all that jazz. I remember watching that every Wednesday night, and that's all we had. That's all that we would feed each other, but also it was a healthy feeding because one, it's just people singing, and even then, if somebody had their boobs all out, she's like, "Beep." You know what I'm saying? So it was
Like,
go do something, go do some homework. Yeah. Don't you need to clean them dishes? Don't you need to go do something? Like, take that trash out. It's Wednesday night, trash out on Thursday. There was always some other thing to do because she knew, like, she's not going to be the one feeding her children and stuff. She's not going to be the one allowing this to happen in her house. I wasn't allowed to watch Family Guy, American Dad, all that. SpongeBob was a barely, and even then, SpongeBob was not doing all that it's doing now anyway. So
it's kind of funny because I remember, I remember one time, it was in high school. A friend of mine introduced me to South Park. I didn't even know what it was. I was like, "What are you talking about?" They're like, "South Park." Like, "Oh, this is a good thing." I'm like,
it's a funny show.
I was like, "Oh, really?" Then I went home. I looked it up. I started watching it, and then for me, I was like, I don't get why they like this so much. I'm like, it's not even a good animation or anything like that.
Yeah.
But thank God, come to find out, my brother. He was already watching South Park, and he knew what was in South Park. So before I even went too far, he's like, "You're not watching this under our watch. No matter, it doesn't matter how far you go."
See, that's a good brother right there.
I was like, "It's not." I mean, by that I was mad. I'm like, "Why?"
Yeah.
But now looking back, I'm like, "Man, I'm blessed."
And trust me, I've watched South Park too, and it's just crazy. It's crazy, and I just like cartoons. I like the animation styles, I like stop motion pictures, and the fact that they're using paper and making this whole big world. I was like, wow, this is impressive. But also, I'm like, with the weed thing, to go back to that real quick, they had I think a certain season that was dedicated to it, and I'm just like, wow, that's so funny, that's so relatable. Ha ha, I've been high before. I get how that works. And there's a lot of times where, the Bible, I think people always be like, oh, well, in moderation. But it's also like, well, you got to be in the right mindset too. You can drink and enjoy a beer, a single beer, maybe even two, maybe three. But once you get drunk, you're no longer in that mindset, right? Like, you got to keep a sober mind. And with weed, at no point once you get high, it's a sober mind, right? You just like, yeah, man, I tell you what, bro, I'm on my high, man.
That's good.
Sober mind, I'm thinking straight. I'm thinking better than I was when I was sober. Like, you can convince yourself of all these things because of the normality of it, right? And I think I was smoking weed probably every day for the past 4 years of college. Just because, it was there. My best friends were the dudes that were doing all of it anyways. And so I didn't even have to pay for it. It became such a normal thing. And people were like, oh my God, I'm going to smoke with you. Come smoke with us. Come smoke with me. Come smoke with me. And it became such a social hub. And I was like, this can't be that bad. Everybody's doing it. And then, it's people out here really successful smoking weed. Snoop Dogg, West Khalifa, like, God ain't killed them. So I probably ain't going to die if I smoke this thing up a little bit. But and that's that mindset that flesh will feed you to make it seem like it's okay. I have not smoked in a while now, and I love it. I'm sober minded. I'm not forgetting things anymore. I'm not as tired. Like, I can go to the gym, work out. I don't smell, like that stanky musk and anything. And like, I thought I was gonna miss it. I don't. And I'm like, wow, if that's something I was doing every day for 4 years, right? As big as I thought it was, I can imagine what God can do with this porn. I can imagine what God can do with the rest of my life and any other issues I may have, because you took something that I thought I needed every day. Something that I was like, oh, I'm craving. I can't believe it. We're in Colorado. It's legal. This would be the one place to get it done. Young Life says no, sticky situation. So I'm like, all right, cool. Let me not do it. But it just became such a thing. I was like, man, I don't know how I'm going to go here, be in the state that started it all in America, and not be able to do it. That's going to be crazy for me. Like, I don't know how my heart, my soul, my flesh, any of that, I didn't know what was going to happen. And now I'm sitting here like, I'm good. Not an urge in the world. I could care less. I think I was walking through here. I was like, weed? Like, my distaste for it, I never thought I would have that, right? So I was like, wow, look at God. And that's all I can say is look at God. Like, I'm good. And I even told my therapist, I was like, yeah, I used to care about it so much, and now we chilling. So it feels good to let that go.
Yeah, have a clean slate.
Clean slate out the wazoo. And he was saying, yeah, it's good that you actually feel that way, because that can ruin your reputation. It can ruin a whole lot of things once you know. Because you remember back in the day, you doing your thing, you're like, oh, you smoke cigarettes? And it's like, oh, you smoke cigarettes? That's so gross. It's so nasty. And that has been my mindset about weed now. Like, oh, you smoke weed? And that used to be how it was before I got to college, before I met that normalized environment, right?
But now
I was like, oh, you smoke weed? You're going to hell. I used to say all this crazy stuff. and then became one of them, right? And now I can sit back like, yeah, it makes sense. Like now I'm like, smoking weed, what are we really running from? Like what hole are we trying to fill?
Yeah.
What are we trying to escape down here? Why do we have to get so high
It's,
to escape this thing?
it's kind of like we're trying to, so it's like we were created to, with the hole where the only key to the hole is God.
Mhm.
But we're trying to fill it with other stuff. Like, God is like, it's too much work. Bible reading, follow your word,
Mhm.
pray, all these things every day. All these things, all these other things took school, but you try to fill it, but then it's like, it's when you have like a key mismatch. When you put the key, it goes in the hole, but you just can't turn it. So everything will be there, but then you can't turn it. It don't work. It doesn't work.
But sometimes you're like, okay, well maybe you can. Maybe it might work one more time. Maybe not. It's we gonna give it a couple tries because the first time it wiggled a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh wait, like we get this faith from this small action when in actuality God's doing so much more, so much bigger.
Yeah.
But we get caught up on that little thing, and I think that's that sin, that normalization, that flesh. So it definitely can get to a point where I'm like, this is dragging on, and I don't even realize it anymore. So yeah, weed was another thing too that was just it wasn't even tough to get rid of, but it definitely became a normal thing to the point that I was like, why not? Why should I ever drop this? Why should I ever let this go?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy that eventually dwindled away. And I'm surprised it dwindled away. I would call one of my friends the other day. I was like, I don't smoke weed no more. She's like, what? I was like, yeah, I don't care. It's not that deep. And that's what I'm saying. I'm like the realization for her from that was just like, wow, like I'm proud of you because like I would only see her if we were about to, get lit. So now I'm like, I'm good. And I'm proud about that. I'm happy that God has done that in my life. But that also shows me like he ain't done yet. You can fix
It's the
relationships.
beginning.
Yeah, you can fix relationships with me and my dad. You can fix consciousnesses and humbleness and all those things. And you can fix addictions. So, if that was the first one, let's hit this next one. So with that, I know that it will definitely require a lot more. I don't know how God went cold turkey with me, but he did. And I think that's just the power of God. Like I can't speak on how God does it, but he does it.
Yeah.
And I'm here to say, hey, I'm proud that he did. So now with this porn thing, I'm like, all right, we got to drop this. And when I saw it affecting how I saw my family, how I saw girls, how I saw coworkers and things like that. And I only had one job, I worked at Chick-fil-A a long time ago. I was there during the summers and I would be like, shawty bad, that's crazy. So to look at all that and to see now, like if I go to the gym, I'm looking away. Like if a girl's walking by, I'm looking away on purpose because I know what it'll do to my spirit and I know how my mind will quickly go to lust. So I'm like, let me just not. Like if I'm gonna delete my social media and start to look at things differently and purposely stop watching things, stop listening to things, I gotta purposely not look at things too. Exactly. Like if it's in my flesh and in my wheelhouse, I'm like, oh, okay, 1 second. Like I like to have some water next to me. I'm like, I'm like, oh, here come a girl. Okay, wow, look at the lights. You seen those lights today? That's really great lighting. That's so phenomenal. Like whatever it takes.
You're gonna be well hydrated all the time.
Oh, well hydrated. I got a whole gallon of water. I can sit there for about 15 minutes. If she start right there, I'm getting up. I'm like, oh, okay, boss. I'll check with you later because I can't do it. But I'm also like, okay, good, because the old me wouldn't have done that.
But you're starting to work on it. That's a good thing.
Yeah. And as I work on it, I'm like, okay, I can work on this as much as I want, but until I put that Bible into it, until I bring God into it, it's pointless work. You know what I'm saying? It's pointless work until you add God. And that has been a tough realization. Not a tough realization. It's been a tough action because of how much it requires, because of the sacrifices it requires. And I've been thinking a lot about like, okay, to die to myself so God can be alive in me, it's going to require this right here. It's going to require this tough action.
Work.
But I know it's going to be so worth it because I can see it in people like yourself and people that I get my God from in a sense, right? I'm like, well, I get enough scripture from this conversation. I got enough scripture from that conversation. I'm always talking to somebody about something.
But it's more that you have to get yourself.
And you got to have it up in there. You remember there was a movie called The Forgotten. And it was about, you remember that plane crashes? Yeah. And he's like, oh, what the heck? Like me and my wife, his wife went away, clothes went down, the baby went, clothes went down. Dude was walking his dog. He went down and he was like, oh, okay, cool. So then I went to heaven and he's sitting here like, oh, okay, why am I still here? Like, I go to church, I do this, I do that. There were pastors sitting there like, Why am I still here? I was teaching the word of God. But I realized like it's a living word.
Yeah.
And we're living.
Yeah.
So we have to let it live in us.
Act in you. It's not just a he said, she said.
Yeah. And I was fine with that he say, she say. And I'm like, man, I had a dream when I was a little younger, and it was me. I was sitting in Paris somewhere doing my thing. Rapture happens, and it was crazy. Like, you know, the clouds, and it was raining hellfire. I was like, wait, it's supposed to be some time between the, you know, us falling out and you know, going up to heaven, and then this starting. Like, I don't got 7 years. Like, what happened? It was immediate hell on earth, and I was like, right? I'm sitting here. I was scared as I don't know what. I remember like. I was looking at the Eiffel Tower. It gets struck. It starts to burn down. My chair disintegrates, and I'm like floating up. I'm like, oh, I made it. And then I drop back down. I'm like, ooh, like it was bad. It was bad, but it was a wake up call as well. So now, dreams like that I can't forget. I'm like, I remember this for a reason. I feel like, and
God is warning you.
Yeah,
You better be ready.
Yeah, he's like,
I know you think it's gonna take this long. It's like,
because if it happened right now, I'd be tight. I'm like, come on, Lord. I was just talking about getting right. What we doing, right? So there's a healthy fear with that, but also there's knowing that there's so much more when you're healed.
Yeah.
Like me and my dad are healed now, and we've done so much more.
Yeah.
I'm a personal trainer. I was a personal trainer back in New York, and I'm writing him a workout so he can lose some weight and do some things. And we couldn't have done that. I wouldn't have cared to do it. I'm like, well, I don't care if you die fat way back then. This is me being honest, man. And now
it's the truth. You can't lie.
Exactly.
That's what's the testimony.
Exactly. So I'm like, man, I don't even care. So it got to a point where I was like, whatever, like, you know, and I remember how he was talking about that with his father. I was like, okay, that's a reciprocation I did not want, so I need to work on that.
Yeah.
And now that we put so much work in, I'm like, we good to go.
It's changing.
So I'm like, okay, if God can change that much, it's time to change. It's time to insert some more. And that's what I'm working on right now currently, you know, just inserting more God, inserting more of my Bible, and getting that accountability. You know, I realize a church group is really pivotal. It's very important, and it's going to help a lot of things in terms of the way I'm receiving, the way I'm pouring out, and the way that I'm dwelling in my word, you know. So I'm excited to see where that's going to go. I'm excited to see where it's going to take me. And I'm trying to work out now just where I fit in. But I also know, like you said, like, when I let God show through me and not me show through me, if I'm showing up to church, I may never fit in. But if I let the God in me show up to church to dwell in the court of his people, right?
Yeah.
It can be so different. So
very different.
As I work on that, it's a challenge for sure. Because step by step. Hey man, one step at a time. Like
baby steps.
Show that's the next thing I was gonna say. One small step for man and one big leap for God. But you got to get that small step first. So I'm excited to take those steps, and I'm excited to continue to grow in that, you know. And I know pornography is not so behind me just yet, but definitely I know that like the more I give to God, the more He's gonna help me with this. So why not? You know, I have a very why not kind of sense now. I'm just like, if God is gonna work this for me for my good, why not?
Yeah.
So yeah.
God is awesome.
He is. He really is.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much the it's kind of the summary of the whole thing, because sometimes, especially when we say that we, especially Christian believer that says, oh, God says this or this, okay, but no, but you put in the work. You have to put in the work too. You just because it's like they say, faith without work is dead. So you have to put in your own. Be willing to put your own work and your own sacrifices and persevere. I mean, you can't just say, oh, one and then I'm done, because I mean, sin doesn't go one time. Sin, I mean, if you keep coming back,
it's in the world. We in it.
Yeah. So I mean, like you said it yourself pretty clearly. Like you have to put in the work yourself, and you have to keep on going. But at the same time, too, you have to be willing to like let God be God, not try to keep him in like, I want you handle this area. This area is like a no go. But you like you said, like you have to uproot your whole box, and then be willing to forgive and move on and make things better. Which I mean, it's easier said than done. But when you can do it, usually it's with the help of God, of course. But when that door opens, that door's open.
Yeah, and it's wide open too. It's like, come on in. Yeah. So I'm excited for that for sure, and I know that, you know, this is a start for sure. I feel like that vulnerability, like I said, and just being able to share testimony, being able to share a story, being able to share the truth, and be as open about where I'm at, where God is doing, what I hope for God to do, and what I've already seen God do. I'm like, all right, well, all I gotta do is wait for the door to open. And I feel like the door has been open for a while because there's been many opportunities.
You just didn't get into the door.
Look, I just been looking at it like, Lord, that's for me. Oh, okay, cool. It's gonna be open tomorrow. All right, cool. I'll sleep on it, and realizing that God still loves you in the midst of that, and God is still waiting for that, and that door is still open. And yes, He closes doors and things like that. But I think in a spirit that is hungry for growth, and in a season of growth, He's not closing the door, but He definitely needs you to grow to go through it.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to keep walking with it, and I'm happy that you remember footsteps in the sand.
No.
Well, there was a thing where Jesus was carrying a man, and there were two sets of footprints in the sand, and then it became one set of footprints in the sand. And the man said,
you remember? Yeah.
And he was like, Lord, did you leave me? He's like, no,
I'm carrying you.
Yeah. So I'm like, Lord, I'm going to get to the door, and if you got to carry me, come on. Like I said, come on, Dad, pick me up. So I'm just excited to see how this is going to go. I know it's going to be challenging. I know it's not going to be easy. I know I didn't pick porn, but it's definitely one of the hardest things that a lot of people struggle with. And I know that in God's eyes, though, this is what I love. Like, even though it's the hardest thing to struggle with, flesh-wise, world-wise, to God, it's a level playing field.
Yeah, God is like, dude, the same way I can give you breakfast in the morning, I can handle that easy.
Yeah, and He like, that's it? This? Can you even see this? This is it? That's all we got to deal with? Trust me, I got you. And that guarantee,
big.
Look, so big, so like the fact that porn is this and God is that, you know what I'm saying? This is going to be like, oh yeah, we got this. So I'm excited, and I keep saying it because I truly am. I know I've just started this journey for sure. I'm trying to get into it more. And I think I always longed for accountability, but somebody I could be consistently open with, consistently truthful with as well, and be like, hey, I failed today. Hey, I looked at this today. Hey, I thought about watching that today. So as I grow, I know that I can't do this alone, and I know that I probably will need a lot more assistance spiritually just to make sure I'm still in line. And I'm going to just start being a lot more open and honest with my boys and some of the guys I've looked to for accountability and see how far they take me. And really not how far they take me, but how much they can guide me as God takes me where He needs to.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
Well, thank you, man. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Hey, thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
It's a good time.
Let's finish with prayer. We finish how we opened it.
Yes, sir.
Almighty Father, thank you, Lord, for this amazing testimony, Lord. We know that we heard difficulty, we heard struggles, we heard flaws, we heard pain, but at the same time we also saw your almighty power and your almighty grace. Because you're the one that says, oh Lord, that all those that the Father has given to you will come to you, and whoever comes to you will never cast them out, Lord, and you will never leave us. Please help those that are having the same difficulty wherever they are, because that's the whole reason why you gave us testimony, that people can know and see that you still alive, so that you still, the things you do for us, you can do the same thing for them. We are nothing special. We are just human beings saved by grace. The same people you died for, we are included in that, and they're included too. Have your way. Guide this testimony to reach whoever you have in mind for it to reach, and whoever you had planned for it to reach. And may it serve only and only for your glory. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, man.
All righty. Got one more for the road. That was good, Chris.
Yeah.
Are you in Asia, Africa, South America, Europe, Australia, or North America with a burning testimony of what God did in your life to share? Do you have a testimony you want to share with the world? There are two options for you to do that. The option 1, online testimony submission. To submit your testimony online, send us your written, audio, and or video recorded testimony at contact@pilgrimwaylives.com. If your testimony file is too large to be sent as an email attachment, such as a large audio or video file, send us a public sharing link to it in the email, or include the link in the online testimony submission form on our website at pilgrimwaylives.com/online-submission. Make sure the link is set to public to ensure that we can access and download the testimony. Please include pictures pertaining to your testimony that we can use during the production phase to enhance your testimony. Instructions for online testimony submission can be found at pilgrimwaylives.com/online-submission. The option 2, in-person testimony recording. Contact us to schedule an in-person testimony session by filling out the form at pilgrimwaylives.com/in-person-testimony. This option greatly depends on our availability to schedule an in-person testimony recording session with you. For more information regarding in-person testimony recordings, visit pilgrimwaylives.com/in-person-testimony. For more information regarding our ministry, visit pilgrimwaylives.com or email us at contact@pilgrimwaylives.com. Thank you and happy testifying. Hope to hear from you soon. God bless and shalom.